Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be starting episode 13 in our Catacombs series, where we try to take you on some deep dives into specific D2R edits and kind of guide you along the way. And with that said, today's topic is going to be all about item corruption mechanics. So if you're not familiar with it, this can be a way to take like a input item into the cube and assign it random stats, or kind of break the item to give you that kind of gambling mechanic, in soft code. So with that said, if you guys are enjoying this kind of content, make sure you like the video and subscribe. Helps everybody out. And with that out of the way, let's roll into taking care of the mod. So as usual, we're going to start out by grabbing the files we need. Now we are in episode 13 after all, so I'm going to be assuming in this tutorial that you've already watched episode 1 about how to create your own items. So with that said, we're assuming that you've already created whatever special item you want that's going to allow you to use this cube recipe and kind of control this, random, stat mechanic. So with that said, the only 3 files we're going to be needing are going to be to add our new stats that will control this, as well as the cube recipes themselves. So that's going to be cubemain.txt, itemStatCost.txt, and properties.txt. And then finally, just to display our kind of custom stat to the player, we're going to add a string reference and item modifiers. So with that said, let's roll right into the actual editing. So we're going to start off by creating our own stat here. So I'm just going to lock things up, scroll to the bottom. We're going to copy something basic just to give us a base to reference. And we're going to be adding 2 new stats today. So one of them is going to be a hidden stat. The other one's going to be a stat we show to the player. So let's go ahead and update the names to these real quick. I'm going to call this one, let's just call it, corrupt underscore display. So this is the one the player is going to see. And then we'll name this one corrupt underscore hidden. This is the one that will kind of help control things, but the player's not going to see this. So let's update the IDs for this real quick. So we'll just choose increment fill. Now I'm not going to go in depth on send bits and save bits and all that here. Please read the Blizzard data guide to explain all the different columns and how they function. But we do want to control the kind of like max value that these stats are allowed to have. So without much explanation, I'm going to go ahead and adjust that for what we want. We only need our display stat to be a 0 or a 1. If it's a 0, they don't have it corrupted yet. If it's a 1, they do. So we just low save bit for that. For our kind of actual corruption stat, we want a higher value. For our demo, we're going to be using a value between 1 and 1,000. So our max value is going to be 1,000 or so, a little above that, but anyways, so we just need to update our stats for that. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 11 there, and actually I'll change that to a 12. So again, I'm not going to explain that much. The formula, if you want to know, is 2 to the power of save bits minus save add, and then minus 1 at the end. So again, just a quick calculator example. This is something I use for my own personal use. With a save bits of 10, your max stat is 1,023. So we want just a little bit more than that, so we're going to use the save bit of 11. But anyways, again, we're kind of done explaining how that works. Read the Blizzard data guide, please. And now we're ready to move to the kind of string section. So again, for this stat, we do want it to display to the character. So I'm going to give it a desk priority of something like 999, so it's always at the very top. For the function, we're going to use a function of 3. This is just plain output whatever the string is, which is all we want. We don't want it to actually display any value. For example, the 1 that we're going to give it to show that they have the stat. We just want it to show the actual text. And then for our kind of string entry columns, we're just going to give it something like corrupt for a string key, and this is what we're going to call it. Now I want to be very clear on this next part. Again, this is hidden, but only for the demo. I want to give it a string so you guys can see how this mechanic works and tweak it, how you like. So for that purpose, I'm going to go ahead and give it some entries now, but I do want to show the value again for the uh, demo, sorry, and then we're going to just give it a string reference of demo only, again, just as a further reminder. So we're all done with our stats here. We've updated the save bits. We've given it a string entry. We're going to go ahead and save that. Just because we just mentioned the strings, let's go ahead and add some new strings for that stat. So I'm just going to copy and paste whatever the last entry in the file here is, and we're just going to do that twice. Again, you'll only add one string entry normally, but for the demo, I'm going to add two so you can see what's going on. And we're just going to give those some new IDs, something high that we know Blizzard isn't using, like 50,000. Again, our first stat entrance is entry is just going to be a key of corrupt. So we're just going to go ahead and put that in for the key there. And this is going to, again, the display stat for the player to let them know that, the item's been corrupted. So obviously do whatever naming or randomizing, et cetera, how you want to phrase things there. We're just making it very obvious. We're also going to update the ID here, but we're just going to add one. And again, for the key for the second stat, we did corrupt demo only. All right. And then this one is going to be all right. So again, this is going to be normally hidden, but we want to show you what that stat is during the demo here. So we've updated our strings. We're all good there. We've made our stats. We're all good there. Because the cube needs a property to read, we need to link a property to our new stat. So we're going to go ahead and just add some new rows here at the bottom. We're going to call the first one, again, our first stat is called corrupt underscore display and corrupt underscore hidden. So we're going to go ahead and copy those in there, but I'm going to change it to a dash instead of a underscore. So that's our property name. Let me lock these up here and expand that. For the stat, we want the property to control as our new stats we just made. And then we're just going to go ahead, set the enabled column, although it looks like it's just a comment. And then we're going to set the function to 17. So this is just a more normal application of how the stat will apply, or I'm sorry, how the property will control the stat. Again, read the Blizzard data guide if you're trying to customize that for your purposes, but for most of you, 17 is going to be just fine. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and add the 0 to the end of the column just in case it still uses that in Resurrected, and we're all done with our property. So quick recap, we've made a new stat, we've added a new string for our stats, and then we've also linked a property to that stat to control everything. Now we're ready to get into the meat of it all, which is going to be our cube recipe. So we're going to go ahead and drag that in here and get started on editing that. So once more, we'll go to the bottom. We're going to add a couple entries here. I guess we'll start with like 4. Our first entry is going to be to start this kind of corruption or randomization or whatever you want to call it process. So we're just going to name that corruption start. Then we're going to have like our first option. And our first option for us is going to be, let's say, breaking. So it's just going to basically make the item useless. And then from there, we'll have some other options, that can happen. Like maybe you get, I don't know, strength, a bonus, for one, or you get, I don't know, vitality bonus for the other. We're going to keep it simple. All right, so those are our kind of just names. We're going to go ahead and lock things up again. We're going to enable all these as long as we can type correctly. We're going to set them for expansion only just because. And then for our number of inputs, we're going to use 2 inputs. So our first input is going to be the items that they're trying to corrupt. So in our case, we're going to use just something basic like any armor. So you can make this as specific as you want, and this is where the real magic of the system comes in. Because according to the player, it seems like they just put an item in, and then they get some kind of random stat out. But what's really happening is that you have a lot of different variables to kind of control things how you want, and then it goes from there. So again, you could set it as any armor, just pop it in there, and this will work. You could say no, only set armors or only unique armors. Only basic armors or only elite level armors. Anyways, you can customize that however you'd like, no sockets, etc. We're going to just leave it on it. It'll work for any armor, and then combined with your kind of randomizer item. So for us, again, we're just using a town portal scroll, but you're going to use your corruption crystal or your randomizer token or whatever you created. For the output, we want it to just spit out whatever they put in the first input, their kind of corruption item. So we're just going to do use item there to just spit that armor back out. But we do want to add a new stat to it. So for that, we're going to add our new property for our hidden stat. So this is going to let us control our new stat. So actually, let me just copy and paste this real quick. And this is the stat we're going to put in mod 1 to modify. When we modify it, we're going to leave the chance and parameter blank, so it always happens. But we want to give this stat a range between 1 and 1,000. So just as a quick reminder, all this recipe is doing is taking an input item, which in this case is an armor, adding it with combined with a town portal scroll or your kind of randomizer item, and then all it's doing is spitting that armor back out, but adding a random value between 1 and 1,000 to our kind of custom stat. For quality of life purposes, we're also going to add this remover item to our output B column so that it outputs, that with it. So now that I've locked that up, we're going to go ahead and output that remover or that randomizer item again. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop here and show you what this has done kind of in game. So we've created our stat, we've linked everything, we've put strings on stuff. Now you'll get an idea of how this is starting to take shape once we start using it in game. So again, I'm just going to go buy some like helmets or something from Charcy. Just any armor will work for us because that's what we set it for. So let's just grab a couple over here. And then for us, it's going to be a town portal scroll, but again, use your whatever randomizer item you're choosing. So we do it once, and it looks like nothing happened if we look at things. But because we set that hidden string stat to display, we can see that it actually got a value of 657. So again, all our recipe did so far is add our custom stat to whatever that item is, and it rolls between 1 and 1,000. In this case, it happened to roll 657. The player would normally never see this stat, and it would just be hidden on the item. So if you do it again, then it performs the actual corruption. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll exit out of that, and we'll finish up with the recipe. But I wanted to explain why we added that custom string and how we can control things from here. So now we can go into the OP param value specifications of our recipe. So this is going to control what is required in order to use the recipe in the first place. So to start the recipe, in order to make sure that players aren't, let's say, abusing the system and randomizing the item multiple times and getting like stacked attributes and stuff, we want to check to see if it's already corrupted in the first place. So to do that, we can go to this OP section, and this time I'm going to go ahead and browse to the data guide just to make sense of this a little bit. And in the OP section for cubemain.txt data guide, we can see that this helps control some of the requirements for the item. And in particular, we care about two of them for this demo. The first one is going to be function 18. We can see if we use this function, then it's going to require that whatever's in the parameter field, which is going to be the stat ID, is equal to whatever we put in the value field. So we can use this to check if that item is corrupted or not. So for that OP column, I'm going to use 18 for equals 2. For the parameter, we're going to use our ID of our hidden stat here. So for us, that ID is 362. So that's going to be our parameter for this section. And again, we're checking to see if they have it or not. So we only want this recipe to work if they have a value of 0, meaning it's never been corrupted before. Because obviously once it has, it's going to be changed to a value of between 1 and 1,000, so it will not be 0. And so that is our basically requirement to use this. Now for the other recipes, we want to change it up a little bit. Again, we know it's a value somewhere between 1 and 1,000, but we want to use something like function 16 so that it checks for less than instead of equals to. So now we can say, all right, so if that same exact stat, again, this is that hidden stat on the item, is less than, let's say, 500, then I want you to break that item. So we're going to copy all these same inputs and outputs and stuff because we're basically doing the same thing, but now we're going to change the stats up a little bit. So we want to show the player that this item has been corrupted. So we're going to add our display stat to that item. And we can just add a 1 again to show that that stat is on there. For our mod 2, now we want to add more to our hidden stat because we want to make sure that that number is above 1,000 now, so that it definitely can't be used again at any time because it'll be beyond our range for the recipe. Again, that stat will be hidden, so they won't see that anyways, so that's fine. And now finally, we get to add the stat or modifier we actually want to add to the item. In this case, it's breaking it. So you can go about this several different ways depending on your goal. Maybe you want to change this item into a magic or a rare item or something instead as a way to kind of fail it, if you will. You can also apply negative stats, so maybe it gives you -4 all skills or something, and now nobody wants it for sure. Or you can do what we'll do, which is we're just going to add like a level requirement, and we're going to add a level requirement of 100. So whoops, helps if you do that in the right section though. So anyways, this will add, as it says, a required level of +100, so no matter what item this gets added to, it's going to make it unusable. And again, it's only going to do this though if that value it rolled earlier between 1 and 1,000 is less than 500. So now that we've explained kind of how that works a little bit, let's go ahead and copy and paste this, and we're going to apply this to the next two, but we're going to change these values some. So we want to say if the value is less than 750, apply strength, and if the value is less than 1,000, apply vitality. And again, we can control the stat it's actually applying. We want all the other corruption stuff to stay the same, but the actual stat it's going to apply, again, we can look in properties, and we can just take a look at what like strength and vitality are. So for controlling the strength stat, we use str, and for controlling the vitality stat, we use VIT, sorry. So let's go ahead and update those. And we're going to say that, I don't know, you get 50 strength. Obviously, it's pretty OP, but this is just for example. So we have our different options here. Again, we have our first recipe that just takes this item and gives it a random value that's normally hidden, but we have it shown for demo purposes. And then once it has that value, you can transmute it again, and it's going to choose one of these options. And these options are controlled by the value you set as the requirement. So you can make this and break this down as specific as you want, and have specific percent drops for each option. Again, we're using just like any armor. You can set up specific item types or specific item codes, specific qualities. You can further reduce that by having, let's say 20 options in between 500 and 750. that all give you, a 2.5% chance at something, whatever. You can control all that from here, but again, this is how you can basically assign, according to the player, random stats to the item or potentially break it, all while using just a few softcode options that you expand as you desire. So I've went ahead and saved that change. We're going to go ahead and go in game and show this all in action. So we do still have that hidden stat that is showing that you wouldn't normally see, but I'm going to go ahead and showcase everything anyways, just so you can see how that worked. So we're just going to buy some Town Portal Scrolls here, and let's start our randomization or corruption process. So we do have our stat here that hasn't finalized corruption. Again, we've kind of put that hidden stat on the item, but we need to transmute it again to officially kind of randomize it or corrupt it. So we're going to finish that, and now we can see that it added 1001, so that's why it shows 1658 now, but it also added our display stat to let the player know that, hey, this item's been corrupted, as well as the random roll for what it happened to get. So again, if we, ignore the 1001 it just added, a 657, if we go back to our recipe, it's above 500 but lower than 750, so it gets the strength modifier. So let's go ahead and just toss this out. We're going to do it again. So again, one transmute to kind of prepare things, and then a second to finalize it. And this time we can see it rolled an 867, so it got 50 vitality instead because it rolled between those. So let's roll it again, see if we can break one here. Oh, not yet. Oh, whoops, there we go. So now you can see it didn't roll anything beneficial. It rolled a 432, which is less than 500, but is not equal to 0. So therefore, it got the required level or the breaking mechanic instead. So now the player can't wear it, even if it was a starter item. It's still above level 99, so they can't use it. And once more, all this is normally hidden. So if we just simply deleted our strings and our string reference for it, let's go ahead and just show that real quick. We're going to go back to our item stat. We're going to remove these demo things that we added. And now we're just going to restart the game, and we should see that our item works as normal as the player would see it. And there we go. So again, the player doesn't see anything special. All he just sees is that the item's been corrupted. He doesn't see any of the behind the scenes numbers. All they do is click it twice, and then it either works or not. So we'll take a shield here. We'll try it again. And there you go. So you can see you can assign a large variety of randomness. Again, it's not truly random, but it is close enough that the player doesn't know any better, and you can make that as detailed and diverse as you want. You can add 1,000 different cube recipe options for every different item type and quality, and different modifiers and ranges, different tiers of qualities, and different percents for each. But all you're doing at the end of the day is copy pasting and deciding your percentages by the values of your requirement check here. So in reality, it's a pretty simple thing, but it gets confusing when people start talking about the hidden stats and things like that. So I hope this has helped explained it. I know it can be a little long-winded, but I try to be thorough. So thanks for sticking around to the end, and I hope you've had a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.